Hello friends, this is Dr. Varna. Welcome to all of you. Today's topic of this lecture is tubular reabsorption and secretion under the topic urine formation. So as we know that the urine formation involves the different steps. First one is the filtration, second one is the reabsorption, third one is the secretion, and fourth one is the excretion. So we have discussed earlier in the previous lecture about the glomerular filtration, how the filtrate is formed and various factors affecting it. And in today's lecture we will discuss in detail about the reabsorption and secretion of the different substances into the renal tubules. So we know that 180 liter per day filtrate is formed by the glomerulus with the glomerular filtration rate of 125 ml per minute, and from this, out of 180 liter of filtrate, only 1.5 to 2 liter of urine is formed per day. It means approximately 99% of this filtrate which is formed into the Bowman's capsule is reabsorbed again into the blood from the different part of the renal tubules, and its maximum part it gets reabsorbed into the proximal convoluted tubule of the renal tubule. Here we appreciate the importance of the role of renal tubules in reabsorption of the constituents of the filtrate and why this reabsorption is needed. So as we know that the composition of filtrate is same as plasma except the proteins. So why this composition is same? Because the filtrate which is formed by the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule, it is under very high hydrostatic pressure. So the filtrate is formed under very high hydrostatic pressure. So the nutrient gets filtered into the Bowman's capsule and hence the reabsorption is needed. Similarly, a few substances like potassium, hydrogen and uric acid, they are ammonia, they are actively secreted out into the different part of tubules from the blood, which are in excess and needed to be excreted out into the urine. So in this picture here you can see that there is a Bowman's capsule where the filtrate is formed, and when this filtrate passes through the different part of the renal tubules, it gets reabsorbed. Since various parts of the neuron differ in their reabsorptive capacity and the particular constituent of the filtrate get reabsorbed in a particular part, it is because the renal tubules, they are not alike all through. The different segments of the renal tubules like PCT, loop of Henle, DCT and collecting duct, structurally they have peculiarity, and similarly they are also different in the distribution of different ion transporters or different co-transporters. So that's why the reabsorption of the different constituents of the filtrate, it differs from one part of the tubule into the next part of the tubule. So here in this picture I will discuss about the different constituents of the filtrate which get reabsorbed. So this is the proximal convoluted tubule, first part of the renal tubule, in which here this outgoing arrow shows the reabsorption of the different constituents of the filtrate into the blood again. So here you can see the glucose, amino acid, protein, vitamins, lactate, urea, uric acid, ions like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, bicarbonate and water. All these get absorbed into the blood again. Among these, the glucose, amino acid, proteins and vitamins, they get reabsorbed 100%. Whereas other substances like these ions and water and urea and uric acid, they also get reabsorbed maximally but not completely and are excreted out into the urine. In the PCT part, few substances are actively secreted from the peritubular capillaries into the renal tubules again, like urea, uric acid, creatinine, some drugs, hydrogen and ammonia. This creatinine, it is the metabolic product of which is generated at the level of muscles. When it get filtered, it do not get reabsorbed at all in any part of the renal tubule. Whatever amount of is get filtered into the renal tubule, it is as such passed into the urine. Rather, little quantity of creatinine is added in PCT part into the renal tubule. So that's why this creatinine is considered the as a tool and to check to measure the GFR, and that test is called as creatinine clearance test. Some drugs which are excreted out into the urine are I will just name few common drugs like penicillin. So the penicillin, it actively it is secreted out from the blood vessels into the renal tubules, and its secretion is so fast that its plasma concentration falls below, and its pharmacological effect it is not obtained. So the penicillin is given with the drug probenecid. What the probenecid basically stops its secretion into the renal tubules so that its optimal concentration can be obtained into the plasma to get the efficacy of the drug. Another drugs like gentamicin, tetracycline, sulfonamides, they are also secreted into the PCT part and are nephrotoxic. Few metabolites like urates, para-amino hepatic acid, bile salts, few metabolites of neurotransmitters or hormones, they also come into the urine actively secreted, like VMA, vinyl mandelic acid, it is the metabolite of the epinephrine and norepinephrine. Few heavy metals like lead, mercury, cadmium, they are also secreted into this part and called nephrotoxicity. Similarly, the iron, if there is hemolysis because of, like in case of incompatible blood transfusion, so when the huge amount of iron is passes into the when the blood the RBC gets ruptured and a large amount of iron is there and it comes into the renal tubule, so this free iron may cause damage to the renal tubules, especially the PCT. So this is about the PCT, and the next part is the loop of Henle. So in the loop of Henle, here this is the descending part of the loop of Henle and this is the ascending part of the, so the descending part of the loop of Henle, it is freely permeable for the water, and so there is a maximal reabsorption of water from here. The urea is secreted out into this thin part of the ascending part of loop of Henle, and whereas this whole ascending part of the loop of Henle, it is impermeable to the water. So from this part no water is reabsorbed rather or added into the renal tubule. only the sodium, potassium and chloride ions, they are reabsorbed from the thick part of the ascending part of the loop of Henle. So this loop of Henle, this part ascending and descending, is mainly related with the concentration of urine and water reabsorption. This DCT part, this is the DCT. Here is again sodium, chloride, bicarbonate and water is reabsorbed, and few substances like hydrogen ion, potassium and ammonium is secreted out from the blood and from peritubular capillaries into the distal convoluted tubule, and similarly into the DCT, this CT part also. This is the collecting duct. From there water and urea is again reabsorbed, and finally only 1% of the filtrate comes in here and the urine is formed. So this is all about that how in different parts different constituents of the filtrate get reabsorbed. Now I will discuss about the mechanism which is involved in reabsorption of different constituents of the filtrate. So if this is the first of all, I will little bit discuss about the structure of the renal tubule and about the proximal convoluted tubule. So here in this picture you can see this is the tubular fluid, this is the tubular epithelial cell. Just adjacent to this there is interstitium, and adjacent to this there is a peritubular capillary. So the filtrate which passes through the tubule, it comes in contact with the epithelial cell lining of the tubule. So this piece, the cells of epithelial cells of the proximal convoluted tubule, they have some peculiarity. Like the luminal side of the cells, it has different microvilli, and these microvilli basically makes the appearance like a brush, so they are called as brush border towards the luminal side. And the presence of these microvilli, it increases the absorptive surface area approximately 20 times. So this is the advantage of this presence of these microvilli into the luminal side of the membrane of the tubular epithelial cell. Similarly, the basal side is towards the interstitium, and this cell is rich in mitochondria because it is going to actively reabsorb the sodium and various other constituents. So in this cell here you can see there is a sodium potassium ATPase pump which is actively working continuously, and it is utilizing the energy from the ATP. This pump is continuously throwing 3 sodium ions out of the cell into the interstitium, and in exchange of that 2 potassium ions are coming within the tubular epithelial cell by the expenditure of energy. And this pump is so active that it utilizes almost 6% of energy utilization. So this pump is very essential. It creates a concentration gradient and the electrochemical gradient within the cell for reabsorption of sodium and various other solutes. This PCT basically it is the 15 millimeter in length, and it contributes to the major portion of the nephron and add a bulk to the renal parenchyma. So because of the peculiarity of these cells, the maximum reabsorption takes place into the PCT, and these cells, they are not very tightly packed. The connection in between the two cells, it is not so tight, and it provides a pore, and there is a gap in between the cells. So there are basically 2 routes which are involved in reabsorption from the tubule. So first one route is the transcellular route, and second route is the paracellular route. what do we mean by transcellular route? So basically, when the different constituents of the fluid, tubular fluid, they pass across the cell membrane of the epithelial cell, then that route is called as transcellular route, and this route involves various help of various ion transporters or various co-transporters, means the protein ion channels which are present on the luminal side of the epithelial cell. So these epithelial cells have different kind of ion channels over the luminal side and over the basal side. There is a difference in the distribution of ions over the luminal side and basal side. Here you can see over the luminal side there is a sodium glucose co-transporter, sodium amino acid co-transporter, sodium hydrogen ion antiport. There is a channel aquaporin. It is a protein which provides passage to the water. So the constituents which pass through the cell by using these ion channels, this route is called as transcellular, and the different constituents along with the water, it passes through the space in between these two cells. So this route is called as paracellular. So there is two kind of routes, that is transcellular route and paracellular route. Now, what are the different mechanisms which are involved in PCT and in other part of the renal tubule also? So first one is the active transport of the sodium. So this is the sodium potassium ATPase active transporter, which provides the concentration and electrical gradient for reabsorption of the sodium. Another channels are secondary active transporters or secondary active transport mechanism like of glucose and amino acids and other nutrients. Here you can see the transporters. And another mechanism is secondary water reabsorption via osmosis. So, and another mechanism is endocytosis of large solutes like proteins. So this mechanism, as we know that the filtrate do not contain protein, because the proteins, they are large size and they are they have negative charge over them. So that's why they do not get filtered into the Bowman's capsule. But few smaller size proteins, they get filtered and they are again reabsorbed, but their size is large, so they cannot pass through these ion channels. So for the proteins, there is a mechanism called pinocytosis. So when this protein attaches with the receptors over this luminal side of the membrane of epithelial tubular cell, there is a presence of clarithrine. So immediately the process of pinocytosis starts and the protein is engulfed by the cells. And another mechanism is solvent drag. What is this solvent drag? Basically, this is the passing of water along with few minerals like magnesium and calcium, urea and uric acid through the paracellular route into the interstitium. So why there is solvent drag? It is because of presence of high osmotic pressure within the interstitium. So this high osmotic pressure creates a osmotic gradient, and along with the water, these urea, uric acid, magnesium, calcium, they also pass into the interstitium. So the mechanism, regarding the mechanism which involve in the renal tubules, it is the active transport, secondary active transport, osmosis, endocytosis and solvent drag. Now first of all, about the mechanism about the glucose reabsorption, especially in PCT. We know that all the nutrients, they get reabsorbed into the PCT. So 100% glucose get reabsorbed. So what is the mechanism which is involved? So in this picture here you can see there is a glucose sodium co-transporter, and this transporter is called as sodium dependent glucose transporter. When the sodium ions and glucose both get attached with this receptor, it allows the entry of both the entities, that is glucose and sodium, within the cell. This sodium ion is again dragged out of the cell by the sodium potassium ATPase pump, and the glucose it is again pumped out of the renal cell from the tubular cell via the receptor GLUT receptor into the blood vessels. So this is the process by which from the glomerular filtrate the glucose and sodium ions they again reabsorbed into the blood. So this glucose sodium transporter, it is the secondary active transport. This ion channel, at this ion channel the mechanism is secondary active transport, because energy is not produced or directly utilized at this ion channel. Rather, this ion channel is utilizing the energy in the form of electrochemical gradient, which is generated by the active pumping of sodium ions from the cell outside in exchange of to potassium ion by the expenditure of energy. So that's why it is called as secondary active transport. The tubular maximum phenomena for glucose. So what is this? The maximum amount of glucose that can be reabsorbed in renal tubules per minute. So as we know that a certain amount of glucose can be reabsorbed only because it involves, for its reabsorption, it involves certain transporters or channels. So the number of channels, it is limited. The number of transport proteins or channels, it is limited in the plasma membrane of the tubular cells. So that's why a certain amount of glucose which is present in the filtrate can be reabsorbed. As the receptors which are present into these transporter proteins, they show the phenomena of saturation. So when all the transporters they get saturated, so they stop the absorption of glucose. So what is the level at which they stop the reabsorption of glucose? So that is called as tubular maximum for glucose, and it is 300 milligram % per minute in female and 370 milligram % per minute in male. This is the level of plasma glucose in male and female. Beyond this, there will be no reabsorption of glucose. The amount which is above that will not be reabsorbed. And what is renal threshold regarding this? This is the tubular maximum for glucose. The plasma level of glucose at which glucose begins to appear in the urine is called as renal threshold for the glucose, and it is 180 milligram per dl. So when the concentration of glucose in the blood is up to 180 milligram per dl, the maximum part of glucose it is reabsorbed, but little quantity of glucose comes into the urine, and the glucose is being reabsorbed continuously up to the level of 300 milligram % in female or 370 milligram in male. The level beyond that will not be reabsorbed because all the transporters they get saturated. So there is a phenomena called splay phenomena. To understand to this splay phenomena, we will discuss with this graph, and this splay phenomena is because of heterogeneity of nephron. As we know that in the kidney there are million number of nephrons, and each nephron do not have exact same capacity to reabsorb glucose because of the different distribution of these transporter proteins into the nephrons. So in this graph here you can see the plasma glucose in milligram per cent, it is up to 100 to 600 marking. Then the glucose concentration into the filtrate, milligram per minute. So here you can see that as the plasma glucose concentration increases, means when it goes from 100 up to 200, so there is a linear relation. As the plasma glucose concentration increases, the concentration of glucose in filtrate, it also goes up. So there is a really linear relation up to this marking. That as the plasma glucose concentration increases, the concentration of glucose in filtrate, it also increases and it is reabsorbed. But when it is not excreted into the urine, but when it comes up to the 180, so little bit quantity of glucose comes into the urine as the transporter proteins, they get saturated. Not all, but almost all the transporter proteins, they get saturated. And when the plasma glucose concentrations increases from 200 to 300, there is a curve. There is a small curve. There is not a linear line, because all the nephronal tubules, they do not get saturated at a time. They get saturated at different time. So that's why there is a little bit curve into this axis plot. This is the this line is showing the excretion of the glucose. So up to the 300, there is little bit reabsorption also. That's why there is a curve. And when it reaches beyond the 300 or 370 in male, its reabsorption completely becomes stopped beyond that. And that's why again there is a linear relation between the excretion of the glucose and filtered load. Means the glucose do not get reabsorbed beyond that, and it is passed into the urine. So this curve is called as splay phenomenon, and it is because of heterogeneity of nephrons. Means all the nephrons do not get saturated. Few of them are still working to reabsorb the glucose. So when the renal threshold is achieved, so the glucose is passed into the urine, and that condition is called as renal glycosuria. This renal glycosuria may have different causes. There may be the congenital defect, like because of the less reabsorptive capacity of the renal tubules, because of transporters defect. So even though in the person of congenital defect, the plasma glucose level is less than 180 mg per dl, but even though because of less absorptive capacity of the PCT, there is passing of glucose into the urine, and the there is clinical condition of glycosuria. Another pathological physiological cause of glycosuria is pregnancy. So here in this picture you can see the filtrate load of glucose. It depends on GFR, glomerular filtration rate, into the plasma glucose concentration. So in pregnancy, what happens? The GFR is increased. The plasma glucose level, it is normal. Why GFR is increased in pregnancy? It is because of high renal perfusion. In the pregnancy, there is a expansion of plasma volume. So that's why there is a hyperperfusion of the kidneys. The GFR, it is increased in the pregnancy, and that's why the filtered load of glucose is more, because when the rate of glomerular filtration is more, so the filtrate passes with a very rapid in a very rapid manner through the renal tubules, and so there is lesser time of contact of glucose with the receptors, and the glucose is passed into the next part of the renal tubule. So the glucose only gets reabsorbed into the PCT, So that's why there is a renal glycosuria in case of pregnancy, also because of increased GFR. Whereas in case of hyperglycemia, like in diabetes, the filtered load of glucose, it is more because of increase in plasma concentration. Next one is the sodium transport. So as we know, the sodium ion, it is very important constituent of plasma, and it is very richly present in the extracellular fluid. So its reabsorption basically happens in all part of the renal tubules, in the PCT, little bit into this loop of Henle, in this mainly in the ascending part of the loop of Henle, thick part, then in DCT, and in the collecting duct also, in the collecting tubule also. So the first thing about the sodium ion is it gets reabsorbed from all part of the renal tubule. So let we start discussion of sodium transport with the PCT, that is proximal convoluted tubule. So what are the different ion channels in the PCT which help in reabsorption of sodium? So basically there is a secondary active transport of the sodium ion, reabsorption via the secondary active transport. As here you can see, there is a sodium amino acid co-transport channel, there is a sodium glucose co-transport channel. So the along with the amino acids and glucose, sodium is also gets reabsorbed via the these transporters are co-transporters. Similarly, there is a antiport channel, that is called sodium and hydrogen ion antiport channel, and through this channel sodium ion is reabsorbed and hydrogen ion is excreted out into the urine. And all these channels are present into the luminal side of the renal tubule. Over the basal side of the renal tubule, there is a channel called sodium potassium ATPase, and it is the channel which is utilizing energy actively. So this channel is continuously throwing 3 sodium ions into the interstitial space and taking in 2 potassium ions into the tubular cells. So this ion channel, that is sodium potassium ATPase, it is continuously producing the concentration gradient and electrochemical gradient for the reabsorption of sodium ions. So these sodium and hydrogen ion antiport, sodium and amino acid co-transport channels, sodium and glucose co-transport channels, all these 3 utilize the energy, that is in the form of electrochemical gradient, which is generated by the activity of sodium potassium ATPase and transporter, and the activity of sodium and hydrogen ion antiport, it is hormone dependent also. The activity of it is regulated by the activity of angiotensin hormone. We will discuss later how it is going to regulate this channel. There is a symport channel called sodium and chloride ion channel. So along with the reabsorption of sodium ion, there is a reabsorption of chloride ions, and it is because of the concentration gradient for the sodium ion which has been generated by the sodium potassium ATPase channel, which is present at the basal side of the epithelial cell of the renal tubule. So in this PCT, here you can see that there are the different mechanisms, that is secondary active transport. In the there is few symport channels, there is few antiport channel, and there are few co-transport channels which help in reabsorption of sodium ions. And this the hydrogen ion which is excreted out in exchange of sodium ion, it gets combined with the bicarbonate ion, and in there is a presence of carbonic anhydrase enzyme into the lumen as well as into the epithelial cell of the tubule. So this hydrogen ion, which is secreted out in exchange of sodium ion, it gets combined with the bicarbonate ion. There is a formation of bicarbonic acid, and it is very highly unstable compound, so it gets dissociated into water and carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide is again reabsorbed into the renal tubular cell. Over there again it mixes with the water. In the presence of carbonic anhydrase, again bicarbonic acid is formed. It gets dissociated in the form of hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. This bicarbonate ion is excreted out of the renal tubule into the interstitium via the this sodium bicarbonate transporter. There is a bicarbonate transporter, so this bicarbonate comes into the interstitium, and the hydrogen ion which is generated, it is excreted out into the secreted out into the renal tubule in exchange of sodium ion. Means the sodium ion is taken in and hydrogen ion is taken out into the renal tubules. So this is how this sodium and hydrogen ion antiport is working. So the hydrogen ion is basically continuously generated within the renal tubular cells by the hydrolysis of bicarbonic acid. Now come to the next part. This is the loop of Henle. So here only water is reabsorbed. Then this NaCl, it is passed directly into the thick part of the ascending loop of Henle. In the thick part of the ascending loop of Henle, there is a co-transporter named as sodium potassium 2 chloride co-transporter. It actively reabsorbs the sodium, potassium and chloride ion from the renal tubules into the blood, and it is again approximately 15 to 25% of the sodium ion is reabsorbed over this part ion channel, and in the PCT approximately 65% of the sodium ion gets reabsorbed. 15 to 25 is in thick part of the ascending part of loop of Henle, gets absorbed via the sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter. Then come to the DCT part. So in early part of the DCT, there is again a sodium chloride co-transport channel. Then again there is a, in the distal part of the DCT there and the CT, there are two kind of cells, epithelial cells, that is called intercalated cells and principal cells. So these intercalated cells, they have a special type of hydrogen ATPase pump. This is the active pump, means it is utilizing energy by ATP. So it is actively secreting. These intercalated cells have these hydrogen ion pump which is actively secreting the hydrogen ion into the renal tubules by their active working. And here you can see there is formation of again bicarbonic acid under the presence of Ca with the help of H2O and carbon dioxide, and when it gets dissociated, the bicarbonate ions, they are excreted out into the interstitium, reach into the blood, and the hydrogen ion is formed, and this activity is under the control of hormone aldosterone. Similarly, in the DCT and in the CT part of this renal tubule, there are principal cells, and these principal cells have two kind of antiport channels, that is called sodium hydrogen antiport channel, sodium potassium antiport channel, and sodium hydrogen antiport channel. So here the sodium is reabsorbed and potassium is excreted, and this with this sodium and hydrogen ion antiport, sodium is reabsorbed into the renal tubular cells, and hydrogen is actively secreted out into the fluid, tubular fluid. So in this manner, almost all the sodium ion get reabsorbed. So just review that 65% gets reabsorbed via the secondary active transport mechanism by the in PCT. Then in the thick part of the descending loop of Henle, almost 15 to 25% of the sodium get reabsorbed with this sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter. Then sodium chloride co-transporter in the early part of the DCT. Over here 5% of the sodium gets reabsorbed, and rest 5% gets reabsorbed into the principal cells of the renal tubules into the collecting duct. So almost less than 1% of the sodium ion is left into the renal tubular fluid, and it gets combined with the chloride ion, and in the form of sodium chloride it gets excreted out into the urine. Now here we will discuss different diuretics or different hormones, how they regulate these ion channels for the secretion or for the reabsorption of sodium ions. So first of all, in the PCT there is a sodium and hydrogen ion antipode. It is regulated by the angiotensin hormone. How it regulates it? Basically, when the tubular fluid passes from the loop into the DCT, here you can see when this reaches into the DCT, and if the concentration of sodium and chloride ion it is less, it is sensed by the macula densa, and this macula densa basically they have the chemoreceptors. They sense the level of sodium and chloride ions, so and then they stimulate to the juxtaglomerular cells which are present in the afferent arterioles to release the renin, and this renin it converts the angiotensin into the angiotensin 1 active form. Then angiotensin 1, when it reaches into the lungs, it gets converted into the angiotensin 2 by the help of angiotensin converting enzyme, and this angiotensin 2 it is the active form of the angiotensin hormone, and this angiotensin 2 basically regulates the activity of sodium and hydrogen ion antipode. So it basically enhances the more activity of sodium and hydrogen ion, this sodium and potassium ATPase channel which is present into the basal border. So it increases the expression of the ion channel of sodium potassium ATPase which is working actively, and it increases the more electrochemical gradient and in the concentration gradient within the renal tubular cells, and that's why there is more and more reabsorption of the sodium via the sodium and hydrogen ion antipode. And this angiotensin it also causes the release of aldosterone via the renal cortex, and this aldosterone it acts over the DCT and CT ion channels, that is over the hydrogen ATPase pump which is present in intercalated cells, and over the this antipode channels which are present in principal cells. So it increases the basically it enhances the reabsorption of sodium ions and excretion of hydrogen ion and potassium. So there are the two hormones which are involved, that is aldosterone and angiotensin, which are going to regulate the activity of different ion channels for secretion and reabsorption of sodium and hydrogen ion. Now the different diuretics which also work on these ions. So here in this PCT we have discussed that there is a formation of carbonic acid under the presence of carbonic anhydrase enzyme. So if the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors are given, there is less formation of bicarbonate ions and hydrogen ions, there is less secretion of hydrogen ions, and so there is less absorption of sodium ions. And similarly, when we reach up to this loop of Henle, there is a sodium potassium 2 chloride transporters. So it is inhibited by the loop diuretic called furosemide. Commonest salt is furosemide. This furosemide basically blocks the activity of this channel. So that's why there is no reabsorption of sodium, potassium and chloride ions, and all are retained into the tubular fluid and pass through this next part of the renal tubule. So the tubular fluid becomes more osmotic, or that's why along with that there is more loss of water. So, and next diuretic that works is the thiazide. These thiazides basically block the sodium chloride co-transport, and from here only 5% of reabsorption is there, so that's why they are mild diuretics. And the loop diuretics, they are very high, they cause very high loss of water and minerals when they are given to the patient. So these thiazide diuretics, they block the sodium ions, sodium chloride co-transport. That's why they check the reabsorption of sodium ion. So when sodium ions are retained in the tubular fluid, along with that there is a loss of water. Similarly, this antipode channel which are present in the collecting duct and DCT, the aldosterone, it is regulated by the hormone aldosterone, and the potassium sparing diuretics, they work on that. So these potassium sparing diuretics like spironolactone, when it is given, it blocks these channels, so there will be less reabsorption of sodium ions. They block, so there is a block the reabsorption of sodium ion and the secretion of hydrogen ion as well as potassium ions. So in this manner the diuretics, they work on different ion channels and produce diuresis. So these loop diuretics, they are very high, they produce high degree of diuresis because 15 to 20% sodium ion is reabsorbed here, and so all the ion, sodium ion is retained into the tubular fluid. Similarly, thiazides, they are mild diuretics. Similarly, these potassium sparing diuretics, they are also mild because they are only blocking the reabsorption of 5% of sodium ions at both the places. So this is all about the sodium transport. So here we can say that the sodium ion, it gets reabsorbed in PCT, in the loop of Henle, in the collecting duct and in the DCT. And in every part it involves different ion channels. Like in PCT, it involves the secondary active transport, the sodium chloride symport and sodium and hydrogen ion antipode. Similarly, in the ascending part of the loop of Henle, it involves sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter. In the early part of the DCT, sodium chloride co-transporter is used for its reabsorption, and in the collecting duct and DCT, the antipode channels, that is sodium and potassium ion and sodium and hydrogen ion antipode channels, are active to reabsorb the sodium ion. So the reabsorption of the sodium ion basically depends on two things, that is electrochemical and concentration gradient, which is generated by the sodium potassium ATPase, which is present in the basal side of the epithelial cell of the renal tubule, and the rate of tubular flow through the renal tubules. So the rate of tubular flow, it also decides the reabsorption of sodium. If the rate of tubular fluid is flow of filtrate through the renal tubule is very high, so there is less contact time for the reabsorption of sodium ions with the receptors. So that's why it is passed through the next part of the renal tubule, and when the sodium is retained in the renal tubule, so there is more loss of water with the renal tubules. That's why in case of increased GFR, if it is beyond the physiological limit, there is diuresis. And this reabsorption and the transport of sodium ion, it do not show the tubular maximum, because there are number of ion channels which are involved in reabsorption of sodium ion in different part of the tubules. So thank you. This is all about the tubular reabsorption. We have discussed the two things, that is the reabsorption of glucose in detail as well as reabsorption of the sodium ion. And in the next part of this lecture, we will discuss other different constituents, how they get reabsorbed. So thank you. we'll discuss in the next part.